It is a scam when you don't allow everyone to operate on fair terms.
We are the Robin Hoods of sports betting. We take something back from the rich bookies and enable our customers to beat them instead.
Hey guys, Alex here and welcome to episode 25 of the Trademate Sports Podcast. Today I am joined by a man called Aaron Hennas, who is the man behind the tipping service Hennerz Bets. Aaron, mate, how are you and how are you holding up during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Just obviously like to say thank you firstly for having me on the show. And yeah, just trying to keep safe, spend some time with the family and wait for this hopefully all to blow over and hoping everyone else is keeping safe too.
Yeah, good man. I just wanted to say before we get off to a flying start with this interview, I just wanted to say that last week, a lot of our listeners will know we had Pete from Smart Betting Club on the podcast, and we talked a lot about the tipping industry. He basically has his own site, which is a tipster verification site. And yeah, he basically went through the ins and outs of that site, and also we talked a lot about just the general stuff about the tipping industry, about what to look out for, how to find people that might be doing the wrong thing, and what to spot if people are doing the right thing. It was really valuable insight for myself, and I'm sure a lot of people out there, because as you probably know, mate, there are some dodgy people out there. In all forms of life, but also in the tipster industry, and it's really good to understand that there can be bad ones. But there can also be good ones, and that was quite an enlightening thing that I realised with Pete last week, was that even though there are some bad ones, that there are tipsters out there who are doing the right thing and are producing good results. So yeah, I guess before we start, I just wanted to say thanks a lot for coming on, because from all the things I see on Twitter, all the podcasts I listen to, just general stuff in the betting industry, it's quite rare that you see a tipster put his face out there and he's willing to talk about kind of, his product or, his service. So it's great to have you on, mate, to talk about your product, and I look forward to talking about it.
Yeah, no, and for me, when you contacted, I thought it was a good opportunity, really, because I thought, if I can help other people improve their knowledge, or think better on how they think of people, or in this service, and why they think of us like that, and just explain, everyone's not the same, and just try and get some credibility out there for us.
No, that's awesome, mate. It's great to have you on, like I said. Well, why don't we just kick things off, mate? Tell us a bit about Hennas Bets and how it came about, and how this became your full-time job.
Yeah, so a few years ago, I was just posting my bets online on Twitter, using the platform really, and I was just always posting them with my stakes, and always showing everybody prior to the outcome. This is what I'm on, guys. This is what I fancy. And I think it quite quickly built up a following, because people were saying, look, this guy's bets, every bet doesn't win, but you know what, credit to him, he shows his bets prior to the outcome, because it's quite easy for people, I think, to post a bet after the outcomes happen, and nobody really know maybe how many different bets they've done beforehand on that outcome, or different outcomes very similar. So for me, it built up quite a lot of credibility straight away, really, where people were messaging and saying, oh, it's great to see you post with your stakes. We use that as a guidance of your confidence in the bet, and then the following just kind of built up from there, really. And it was just the fact that people was messaging saying, I love the fact that you look for the value in a bet, and for me that's a big thing when gambling and trying to profit from it. I feel that you must look for the value in the bet. And I was just slowly building away, and just building a following, and people were just coming along and just following the process and really enjoying it. And then it was about 16 months ago, we started to notice that we had about 8,000 people on the free page, and at this time there was no VIP or anything. And people were actually saying, bloody hell, the moment you post a bet, we're losing the odds straight away. And I think that was credit to myself and everybody else that was that was looking to follow me and stuff like that, the bookmakers were really slashing the odds quite quickly on certain markets. So, I had several messages and stuff like that, and people said, look, the only way I think, you might get around it, and for us not to lose value, because you have a lot of people doing bigger stakes than me, and, doing real big stakes. So they're keen to get the highest value on the bet. And they said, would you look at maybe a service where they pay a small fee, but, that way then everyone who wants to join can join, but it also helps where you've got that many people trying to get on a bet, or that many is a big difference. So we noticed that then that would obviously try and keep the odds at the value for longer, which was ultimately the goal for everybody. So I started the VIP about 14 months ago, and here I am today.
Yeah, so can you explain that a bit more? So you were saying that now that you have the VIP, that there's less movement in the odds, if you know what I mean, when you bet on that. So you're saying that just because there's been a reduction in the amount of people that see your bets, that the odds aren't moving as quickly as they were, or as much as they were?
So they still do move. Unfortunately, you will still get the movement, and I think that's just the sheer volume of people getting on a specific bet. So I posted a bet now at 11:48, and within an hour, you will get a slight movement on the odds, sometimes quicker. Again, it all depends on the market that you're betting on. We've noticed recently, especially when we've gone into like that Belarus market a few times, because of obviously that's the only market really there at the minute. It doesn't take a lot to move it. It really doesn't. So, and again, I think it works on the amount of money going on it, rather than, it doesn't matter I think they look at how much money's going on at that price, and then they'll look to lower it down. So where we was noticing the difference was, we had 8,000 free followers at the time, and we was a lot of people were really interacting and following it, and we was noticing that you was putting some bets on and they was going in 5-10 minutes. So for everybody, it become a bit like, oh damn, I've missed it, and for me, I am a lot about value. So I'd get messages saying, oh, it's gone from evens to 1 to 2. Do you think I should take that bet? No, not for me now. But then obviously certain people would, say, oh, well, I've missed out, I want to get on it. So there was a fine line. So for me, it was more about trying to lower that down. And for the people that really wanted to, make some consistent profits, maybe build a service like I have, and, just eliminate, the odds moving so quickly.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned the movements in the Belarusian league, because I've noticed that in my own betting, mate, that the significant line movements, just because of the less amount of liquidity in the market. So it doesn't take much if you've got someone staking quite big to move the line quite quickly. So I think it's just a good tip for people out there that are listening to make sure that when you are betting on those lower leagues, to make sure that you take into account that the odds actually aren't as accurate, because they've got less information in those odds, just because there's less liquidity. So, and the ability, it's just a lot easier to move those lines. So you have to take that in with you have to be a lot more cautious when you're betting on lower leagues like that. And it's something that I'm sure punters out there or bettors out there are learning day by day at the moment, with the lack of big leagues coming on. I know we've got the Bundesliga starting, just started by the time this podcast comes out. So, just something for people to look out for, mate.
I was just going to say, just as going back to that small market, at the time, I would always encourage people when they're looking at stuff like that the reason why a lot of them will move so quickly is, if you notice throughout this whole pandemic, that Bet365 haven't shown no card markets for the Belarus league. So Sky Bet have, but that also, all that then does is that brings all them people that might usually use Bet365 as their betting platform, it would then bring them over to Sky Bet. If that's a market that they're used to betting on or like to bet on, it would bring them over to Sky Bet. So you could have an extra volume of people looking to bet on that market, which again in turn brings it straight down real quick.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And then just to do with I saw that you've been releasing some tips for Belarusian football. I I think it's safe to say, I guess you've never watched Belarusian football before before COVID-19. So how did you go about trying to find tips during this time?
Well, for me, it starts as any other process, really. The only thing that I didn't have that I have on other leagues, such as the Premiership, Italian, German, some of that, is the knowledge of the game and how they like to play the football. Like I always say, Italian football, you're more likely to get the fouls and stuff like that. The Spanish football, you're more likely to get them playing football, but you can find teams there too that do like a card or two, or you just get to know the teams a lot better and you watch them week in, week out. But nothing really changed for me when trying to find the value in the bet. I'm always, it's always the same kind of thing. I'll look for the home and away form in each team. I'll look for the current head-to-head trends between them two guys, the fixtures that they've played, and stuff like that, really. So you're really just trying to break down the markets that I would always look at. So card markets, goal in each half, stuff like that. So for me, it takes me straight to them kind of stats. So I'm always looking at the home form. What's that away team like away from home? What are the head-to-heads like? Do they both normally score? Do they usually concede goals? So nothing really changes in my look, what I was doing to find the bets, but obviously trying to find them does become harder because you don't always know where to look for straight away. Whereas in football that you're used to betting on, I could, pick 3 or 4 teams within a fixture list straight away that I would have, pinpoint and think, I think there could be value there, or know what you're going to look for in that bet. So I might, see Man United v, I don't know, Leicester and go, yep, I don't know, it's going to be a both teams to score bet, or and already have their earmarks from what I've the recent head-to-heads, for example. Whereas when you've never looked at this league before and you've never really studied it or had long to study, it does definitely make it more difficult because you don't always know the quality of football 2-3 years ago. When you're using these stats, you don't really know how good the football was then, and still you don't know how good the football really is at this time. So it's just really like the simple stuff, and just trying to break it down like that and use them stats to help me generate a bet that I think holds value, really.
Yeah, mate. You mentioned looking through stats such as their win-loss record for the current season, I'm assuming, and things like their head-to-head. And by head-to-head, I assume you also mean their previous encounters between two teams. I spoke to a fella called Mark O'Hare a couple of weeks ago, and he's a sports betting analyst, and he said to me that instead of looking at previous meetings between teams and also just straight wins and losses, he liked to more look at instead of wins and losses, he liked to look at statistics like expected goals between each of the teams during those games, and also when it came to previous encounters, he kind of saw that as something that he didn't really like to use, I guess, in coming up with valuable, tips or bets in the market. Can you kind of speak to, like, one, if you use expected goals as a way of determining what you're going to bet on, and what you think about him saying that he thinks it's kind of a fallacy that we should be looking at previous encounters between teams?
Well, yeah, for me personally, I think you should, take a look at the head-to-heads, because at the end of the day, they're stats that are there and are there for a reason. That those stats personally don't lie. They've shown the outcome over maybe 6 or 7 head-to-heads within that team. And for me, then, if you had seven head-to-heads and 6 of those fixtures, they both scored against each other, I'd be looking at it going, they tend to get goals against each other. But I wouldn't take that straight away and go, right, that's going to be my bet. I'd be then looking at their last 5 to 10 away games, that's the team. How many times have they scored away from home? How many times have they conceded whilst away from home? And vice versa with the home team. And I'd be looking to then build up a picture that way. But with the other side of things, what he said about the goal market thing, I kind of agree with that, because I've noticed sometimes that you can get, for a home team maybe to score 2 goals, you might get even money for that bet. But the win might be even money, or 10-11, or 11-10 for the home team to win. So yes, there's a slight maybe risk if you took the 2 goals. If they won 1-0, they didn't. But if the stats were saying that, look, they should normally score 2 goals, that's what they're a team that are putting away goals against a team that's leaking goals left, right, and centre. Then for me, I would prefer to take the 2 goals. If the price wasn't too different, I would take them just to score the 2 goals, because anything can happen in 90 minutes. If you've got the 2 goals and they go to, and then it comes to 2-1, you don't mind, if the last 20 minutes, if they concede or they don't, because your bet said that they scored the 2 goals. And for the slight, difference in value, or if any value change at all, then sometimes that can be something really to look at. And I'm noticing that more a lot. You're really starting to see where 1.5 goals could be in and around the same value as a team to win, a home team, if they're a high flying team. So you have to weigh, well, look, do I think they're going to score 2? What's the odds saying? The odds are saying that the home team should score 2.5 goals. So you're saying, well, if I can get 2 goals and that covers the win, then maybe that's safer and the bet gets done and finishes quicker. So there definitely are things like that you should be looking at too.
Yeah, so there's a stats website called 538, and they basically, and I'm sure some other stats websites do this, is at the end of every game they'll obviously post the real score. So let's say it was a game between Manchester United and Arsenal. Let's just say Manchester United won 2-0. But then, so they'll post the game score, but they'll also post the expected goal score of, let's just say, throughout the events of the game, Arsenal actually dominated most of the game, had more shots, had more, probabilities of scoring. So they might say the expected goals was actually 2-1 Arsenal or something like that. So do you look at those expected goals markets too, or are you just, because at the end of the day there is a lot of luck in football. You can have those games where Manchester United win 2-0 but Arsenal dominated the whole game. So do you ever look at those kind of statistics of expected goals rather than just seeing what the end result of the game was?
Yeah, to be honest, no, I don't really look at the expected goals too much. I have before, but for me, again, I take every game by every game. So, if I've managed to watch it or read a report or watch the highlights and stuff like that, then for me, that's what I'd be remembering, and that's what I'd be looking to keep in the back of my mind. Not what they're maybe saying could have happened, but actually I watched that game and I seen it, and I know that they weren't very good at the back, or they had a centre half missing that was a key man of the squad. So for me, I take that with a little bit of just a small viewing, really.
Okay, cool, mate. So let's talk more about your process for finding tips. Like, what do you? You've spoken to it a little bit already, but how do you go about finding your tips every weekend?
So on a normal weekend, away from this pandemic, I would be homing in on the Premier League, Championship, League One, and then the Bundesliga, Real Madrid, Barcelona, them types of teams, the higher elite European teams. If I was trying to build like a treble or something like that, and I would just be again looking at their form, knowing already how they're doing in the league. What their squad's like, their squad depth, any injuries, are they in derby matches, are they in big high-end matches? It all depends kind of what bet you're looking for at the time. But for example, say the Manchester derby, I probably wouldn't be homing in too much on certain things, but I'd be looking straight away thinking there's a possibility there could be cards. It's going to be a high intense game. Both teams are capable of getting cards. And then I'd be looking to go, right, what backs that up for my thoughts? So I'd be going to look at their last 6-7 head-to-heads. Again, Man City's away record for cards, Man United's home record for cards, because they do have an impact if you look at the stats and stuff. Home and away, teams do tend to get more cards. So they're things you have to look at. And a big thing for me there also would be the referee. I'd be looking to home in on what's the referee like? How does the referee play this game? Because again, you have certain referees that really do, will let things go for 40, 45 minutes and then start maybe pulling out the odd card or two. They're not probably the ones that you want to be looking to be betting on week in, week out, because if you're looking for 2-3 cards in a specific team and they're used to letting the play on and stuff like that for the first half, that can really put you under pressure for your bet, leaving you with maybe 45 minutes to get 2 or 3 cards for a specific team. Could really put you under pressure. But then on the other hand, you have other referees like Mike Dean, who you would be going, it doesn't matter what time of the match, a foul is a foul, and he will punish accordingly. Sometimes you maybe even look at it and think, oh, did that deserve a card? So again, you have to use them stats provided to you, and look at that and go, right, these are the referees for these fixtures, and kind of base it on there as well.
Yeah, okay, cool, mate. So you're looking at lots of markets, I'm assuming. So you're not just looking at your 1x2, you're not just looking at Asian handicaps, European handicaps, you're also looking into the card markets. And I had a great conversation with George Gamble, who put me onto you. Basically, we had a great podcast where we went through kind of some of the ins and outs of the card markets and where you can find value and whatnot. Is that something you're seeing more so nowadays, that you can really exploit more value in card markets than, say, a 1x2? Yes.
Again, going back to maybe about a year ago when VIP was 6, the odds we were getting then were fantastic. They were really, really good. And again, I think it just goes to show that the more people are on they do start to change it. So for us, it was something that we had to really look on and you use to your advantage. But people like George's stats they provide, they're excellent. You use them as a guidance, and the value that you can get them when it's in, like, so for example, 2 cards at home for Man United might be evens money. But you might be able to get, now we're noticing, like a card each half, you could get that for 2-1 or slightly even better odds than that sometimes. But again, that could look great on paper. But going back to what I said with the referees is, if you've got a referee that doesn't really tend to give out many cards in the first half, and you've got the stats provided to you that kind of back that up, then that bet really does become a risk bet rather than a value bet. So again, it's breaking down them things. You have to look when these odds are presented to you and they are shown, as good odds. You might think that's good value. You need to ask yourself, why have they give you that value? Is it a mistake, or that you believe it's a mistake and that you can profit from it? Or is there a reason that the fact that the stats show that they don't really get that many cards at home, so it's probably not a value, it's more of a riskier bet? So then you question yourself, do you take that bet or not?
Yeah. So if you had to sum yourself up, mate, in terms of why you've made money from sports betting, or what, probably the better question is, what is your edge that you have over a lot of gamblers or a lot of bettors out there? How would you summarise what your edge is in sports betting?
I think it's just the fact that I've done it for years and I've played at sports at a very high level, and I've always been in and around football pretty much my whole life. I watch it as much as I can, and that really does give you an insight into the game itself and how it works, and how you can find profitable bets within that market, and the teams, knowing a lot about the teams and just your general footballing knowledge. It really can, help you along the way when trying to profit from gambling in that industry of sport, like sports football. If you've played in that level, you just build. It's just a bit of a knack, really. You just end up building a bit more knowledge, and I suppose over the years you remember how certain teams have played and how they play and their style of play, and again, different management moving around. That's sometimes a good market to get into when a new manager's appointed. It could be a great. The bookies sometimes don't know how to predict it. You could have a team that have lost 6 on the bounce, but under a new manager, you could get some real value odds. And again, it goes down to maybe knowing what that manager's like, and knowing, what that manager's style of play is going to bring to that team, and knowing or thinking, will that be better for that team? And if you believe so, then you could really find some value in the early few weeks.
So are you saying that you'd rather, or at least when you're producing your tips, you'd more so rather use your own opinions from your experience watching football, playing football, rather than using statistics and, I guess, hard form statistics rather to inform your tips?
50-50, because at the end of the day, stats don't lie. Stats are there to be used to gain more knowledge and to gain a better picture. So they don't lie. They are the outcome of what has previously happened. However, you can't always rely on the stats. The stats doesn't win you the bet, but the stats can guide you to that value. So some of it you still have to use your own knowledge and opinion of what you think the outcome is, but also you do have to use the stats to your best advantage. So it's a bit 50-50, to be honest. It's both. I wouldn't 100% rely on stats, but I wouldn't want to bet without them. I'd also want them there to use, and especially when tipping, because people like to see why you've done that. So for me, in my head, I could think, well, I really favour this outcome because I've watched this game, and the last 3 times I've watched them, they've done this, that, or the other. But when providing that stat, other people might like to hear 4 out of the 5 times of the bet that we're placing has happened. It's just a little, so that's an 80% in our favour. So it's just, a little bit of, it backs up what you're saying, and also it builds confidence in the bet for other people that are going to follow your bets.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting because I don't know how much you know about like how professional sports bettors go about their work, like your Tony Blooms, your Matthew Benhams, these kind of guys. The way they come up with their bets or their value bets is going through the markets, and they've got their own algorithm. And essentially if say Manchester United is at 2.0 in odds to beat Arsenal, they will produce their own odds on the game essentially. And then let's just say their odds say that, all right, Arsenal or Manchester United, should be at 1.9 in odds, but the bookies are offering me 2.0, then there's some value to be had there. So I'm not sure how much they kind of use their own, football nous or opinions on football. I guess these kind of people out there are more so relying on statistics or algorithms and these kind of things. So, I guess the way I look at it, and a lot of people would look at it, is they would say, if everyone was just relying on their opinion, because everyone's got an opinion about football, everyone has an opinion on sports. I mean, I talked about it last week with Pete that I feel like I know a lot about rugby and these kind of sports, and if only I could convert that into some like a really successful sports betting when I first started. But it's not really that possible, I don't think, just to only use your opinion. You have to be able to back that up with what the markets are saying, and also back that up with statistics and stuff like that. So, I think it's important that people know that like I said last week, if only I knew these kind of things when I first ever started sports betting, when you first turn 18, because when you're 18 you think, okay, I'm ready to rumble because I know a lot about this, I can make money from this. But it's so much more than just your own opinion.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it also goes down to, especially in the younger years, is discipline, and really, trying to keep that discipline, not chasing a losing streak. They're big things that you really can't do if you want to make it, successfully and keep a high profitable bankroll. Losses will happen along the way, but you can't chase them losses, and you have to sit down, regroup, take whatever time it is, 24 hours, whatever it is that you need to say, right, no, I'm unsure on this, or what. Everyone deals with it differently, I suppose. But for me, if I'm on a 2-3 loss streak, you're thinking, right, what am I doing here? What can I do to change things? And what can I do to make things better? And maybe look at different markets that you might have maybe put to the back of your head for the last 3 or 4 games, and just try and bring them forward to help you out. But
Yeah.
you have to rely on the stats as well. You can't put the stats away and say, I've read them, that's it. Because at the end of the day, the stats are there, and they're there for your help, but they don't lie. That's it. They're there.
Yeah, they certainly don't lie, mate. What sports are you focusing on? Obviously, I'm assuming most of your sports you focus on are football related. Can you kind of give us maybe a percentage on how much time you spend on football compared to other sports?
For me, I'd probably say 90% of my bets are football. The other 10% you might get boxing, UFC, golf, markets like that. But the golf would probably is normally in the major championships. I'm a big boxing fan, so I will pick up some boxing bets along the way. But again, they are high risk. They are high risk bets because you've got, especially once you get into like the heavyweight division, you have boxers at the level where one punch they can end a fight. So you really do have to look at them kind of. For example, Wilder Fury. I think everyone. Well, there was mixed opinions, but everyone would have probably thought that Fury would have. Wilder would have picked up the win again, but Fury come in there and totally dominated and stuff like that. So for me, in them kind of bets, my stakes go down, but also then I maybe look at round betting. So I'll maybe not specific rounds for them to win, but maybe going. I expect it to go over 5 rounds. And again, I'd be looking at my betting knowledge on that, my boxing knowledge, the stats saying, well, Fury hasn't finished a fight, for example, in 6 rounds, so the chances are he's going to look to take that way again. He's a back end fighter. That's what he likes. But then again, for that fight, for example, I wouldn't look to do that because you'd be going, well, Wilder can end somebody at any time, and maybe I think he's 3 or 4 KOs within 2 rounds. So that there, you'd have used the stats and to look at that bet, but you wouldn't probably have took it. You would probably say something like that is too high risk. I'm just going to watch on as a fan. So you really do have to break them kind of bets down. But 90% of them are football, and that's where I'm most profitable. And again, the Championship, League One can have some real good value as well, not just only the Premiership.
Yep. All right. Can you talk about finding value, mate, and what your process is for finding something that you like? Say Fury Wilder, say you like the chances of Fury winning. How do you then use that, Fury Wilder, a tip that you like Fury, how do you then convert that to the probability of that happening and then looking at the odds? How essentially do you find value?
Yeah, so let's, for example, say in that fight I was going to pick Tyson Fury to win the fight, and I said, right, I think he's going to win. Then I'd be looking to go to, how does he win the fight? How have his last 10 fights finished? It'd be something I'd be looking to think, his 10 fights have finished like this. Does he normally go the distance? Stuff like that. And then I'd be looking at Wilder, his opponent. What does his opponent do? How does his opponent take on these fights? Does Wilder look to finish them? Do they go the distance? And then again, I'd be looking at the value in the bet. I'd be going, well, if they're giving me evens money for it, is that really good enough? And then I'd be looking across all betting platforms and boxing platforms, anywhere that was going to really offer the markets in that, and trying for checking all platforms, checking the odds across them, and looking for differences, and say, well, this Sky Bet, for example, might be offering you evens money for 1 to 6 rounds, but Sky Bet or Bet365 could be 2 to 1. So I'd be asking myself, what is the value? What's the difference in value, or why is there that difference in value?
Okay, mate. And so, in terms of measuring the success of your tips, and I mean, here at Trademate Sports, we're always advocating the importance of making value bets and trying to beat the closing line of what we believe and is widely regarded as the sharpest bookmaker out there, Pinnacle Sports. So in terms of every bet that our customers place or that we place, we're always looking at, did we beat Pinnacle's closing line? How are you then going back? So let's just say you did bet on Fury to beat Wilder. Fury wins, good, you've won some money. But then do you go back and judge not only your winners, not only your losers? Are you then going back and checking, did I beat the closing line of Pinnacle, or did I get better odds than you could at a sharp bookmaker? Those kind of things. How are you looking back on your bets?
Well, yeah, it's the same kind of thing. When you see other tipsters and other people then posting their winners, it's nice to say, "Oh, I beat them. I beat their value. We maybe found better value than them," as in maybe we got on the market before them. So they're things you have to really look at as well, because especially going back into like the Premiership football, you can miss the value in a bet within 2-3 hours. You might not see it, you might not looked into that bet, and then all of a sudden you go to look at that bet and or a bet that you would normally look at, and the value's gone. So for me, then we know that it's not worth risking the high stake for a low value bet. So yeah, there is a fine line in finding the value in bets, and you do have to look at when you're placing that bet and you've checked it across other platforms and you're at a price that you like. You have to look at that and go, yeah, that's time to go. But if the market or the betting platform that you're with or looking to bet with is way under what they're already at, you've missed it in my eyes.
Yeah, that's important. But what about post bet, mate? So are you ever going into your results, whether that be a winning or a losing bet, and are you going, okay, that was a good bet because it won, or are you saying that was a good bet because it had value?
Well, obviously, you want it to be a good bet because it won, but you also want to be able to say if it didn't lose that there was still value in the bet. So you want to be able to say, right, it didn't win, but the bet that we took, we had reasoning for it, we had the stats to provide it and to back that up, and it was a value bet, although it didn't win. You will get them, of course, along the way, but yeah, you before you place the bet, or I feel that whether there's value in that bet already, or whether you're on a tight margin for profit. So you have to consider these things, and another thing as well is cash out. I don't like it. It's not for me, but people that follow me will look to maybe place a bet that's got a cash out market option. So for example, Man United to score 2 goals on Bet365 would be evens money, and you would get a cash out. But you might get slightly better odds on, I don't know, Sky Bet Victor, for example. I'm just saying they would probably offer a market cash out on this, but they might not give you a cash out. So again, that goes down to personal choice really, because some people might take the lesser value in the bet, but knowing that they can cash out for a profit. Some people may say, I'm happy with that bet, I like it, I'm going to run it through to the 90 minutes regardless, so I'm going to take the platform where they don't offer me a cash out, but the odds are better. So there's more of a risk, because if they go 1-0 down or they're drawing late on, you might still be able to claw some of your stake back on 365. Whereas elsewhere, you might not be able to, but the risk to reward might be slightly higher, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So are you, when you do place your tips at the end of the game, are you ever going back when you're judging whether it was a value bet or not? You're not looking at metrics, if you know what I mean, and thinking, was that a value bet, or are you just using your own opinion after the game and saying that was a value bet? Do you understand what I mean?
More an opinion. Yeah, more of an opinion, really. It'd be more of an opinion for me rather than maybe looking at the metrics after the outcome. I'd be more going on an opinion. Well, I've watched that game now. Was it as good as I anticipated, or was the value there like I originally thought? But I wouldn't be homing in too much on maybe after lines or anything like that too much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's a little bit different to what we do at Trademate Sports. Obviously, a software can't have its own opinion. So, in terms of us judging whether we have made value or not, we strictly just look at the Pinnacle's closing line, which is widely regarded as the sharpest bookmaker out there, and then from there we gather whether, I did bet 3 hours before the game, 4 hours before the game, whatever. Did those odds I took then, did they convert into the closing edge, which is the most accurate odds you can have, because then you've got all the information in the market? Did those odds that I got on convert to after kickoff or just before kickoff? Did they convert to value? And then that's when we look at the closing line of Pinnacle ourselves and try and figure out whether we were able to beat the Pinnacle closing line. So, mate, I went through your website and you clearly state quality over quantity, which is obviously very important. You don't want to be taking any, bets that you don't rate. You're not just trying to get in volume. The main thing is that, I guess, with value betting, is you do need a large sample size. As a lot of the time, the reason why you get on a bet might not be because 100% of what you believe in. It more so might just be because the odds are too big on an outcome happening. It doesn't match the probability of something happening. So would you say that, I guess it's very hard to judge, because if you're going quality over quantity, then you're obviously not getting the quantity in, and then it's going to take you longer to be able to fight things like variance and those kind of things. How do you, I guess, what do you think about variance in the long term if you're not able to get in as much quantity as you'd like?
To be honest, for me, and I've always said quality over quantity for a reason, because I think the more bets you can bring into play, and the more bets and the more different outcomes, and so that, I think you're putting more risk out there. It's at the end of the day, the more money you are able to put on the line every time. So for me, if you can pick out the quality over the 10, 20 bets and limit them, say, from 20 to 12, for example, over a certain period of time, a week or whatever, within the sporting week or whatever, I believe following that method is a lot better long term. Whether some people might say, yeah, but if you put more bets on and you lose a few, the wins that way. I'm not too sure, and I buy that, really. I believe in just the picking the quality value, and if it means not betting for a day, 24 hours, 40 hours, but I know that my next bet is going to bring me value rather than risk, and it's not just a bet placed on a whim. I don't want to do that, and for me, long-term profit is key. So I always say, I'm happy to ride out a day, 2 days betting, whatever it may be, without value. Without thinking I found value, so I wouldn't bet. And the long-term profit is key. And I'll always say that you don't need to bet every day. You don't need to. Some days you might do 2 or 3 bets on a day. Saturday afternoon, when all the football league's back, you probably will put more on, but you will still have found value within them bets. And like I say, quality over quantity.
Yeah. So how big do you think your sample size would be then, mate? Do you think, I assume you've been betting for a long time now, mate, but let's just say ever since you started off your VIP, or ever since you started out giving away tips, how big do you think your sample size is in terms of the amount of bets you've offered to people?
Oh, so for example, it's probably around 60, 70 a month, I would say. But again, obviously that can really change quite easily within the pandemic that we're in. That will obviously come right down, and you could see that across my profit losses on the betting apps that I use. You can see that the stakes that you're normally winning and even withdrawing are a lot less, because you're not betting as much. But I would still say you've 60, 70 bets across a month, but they could come in you could have maybe like 30 within a week, especially when you've got like Champions League football on and stuff like that. You couldn't, maybe not 30, but you can get a lot of bets within a short period of time. But then you could maybe go the next 7 days with 10 bets, and it really is up and down, as in, you know, where you it's like a cluster. So, you know, the Champions League, you'll have a cluster of bets there, and then the weekend will pick up, and then the midweek it will slow down. But that's the way I like to bet, as in I'd like to wait and find for the value. You see people throwing 7-8 tips out a day. I don't believe it works. I'm not a fan on it really. So yeah, for me, I just take it along in my own time. I won't get rushed into something. I won't, you know, follow other people because they're placing the bets or other tipping services and think, right, I need to get this service out. I need to get a bet out. And I like to think that the members within the VIP team understand that. I very rarely get pressured into a bet, or, you know, in the early days you used to get messages saying, oh, have you got any bets today? Have you got any bets today? And I used to just go back to the point of quality over quantity. When we get the bet, you'll be out there for everybody. And in the long run, a lot of people really started to appreciate that and understand what that meant, because you used to get, oh, I followed this guy, he's done 6 bets today and only 1 or 2 have won. So for me, that, you know, that might have been some of the reason, you know, why, because maybe he's not picking the quality and he's more going for the quantity in the bet.
Yeah, I 100% understand what you're saying there, and it completely makes sense. You would never want to take a bet or offer a bet to anyone where there's absolutely no value in the odds. So in terms of your overall sample size, you said something about 60 to 70 bets a month. So I guess if you go into that in terms of a yearly thing, around 600, or sorry, geez, my math's terrible. That would be something around, I would say, you know, 800 bets a year. How many years have you been going for then, just to kind of get an idea of how big your sample size is? Because people, I mean, the biggest thing is that variance can affect results massively when it's only a small sample size of bets, whether that be winning bets or losing bets. So like I said last week, you could have a tipster or someone that's lost their first 50 bets compared to someone who's won their first 50 bets, but the loser could actually be the one who's actually finding value and is actually going to be successful long term. Can you kind of give us any kind of, I guess, number in terms of how big your sample size is right now, and how much people can judge your your overall sample size right now? Because the bigger the sample size, the more accurate the results are.
Yeah, well, I'd say if we went on a figure of maybe like 800, maybe 700 bets a year, I've been doing it probably near on 9-10 years now. So, you know, it's a big variance and a sample size in betting. And also, you know, throughout them years, you may not have always been profitable because, you know, your betting patterns change. And like I say, you use platforms like this to really break down and pick bets out better and stuff like that. But the fact that you've been in and around it for that long, and like you say, the sample size, I do think that has a positive effect, because you maybe look at a bet and go, I've seen that value like that, I've seen that bet that big before, and I've took that before, and I know why it's that good, and I know why they're offering that market, and you know what, I'm going to stay away today. And that's all about that. You don't just get that overnight. That is all built over years of sports betting, because you will look at certain trends and maybe every year in a certain fixture you'll see certain odds and you go, oh, I like that. Oh, that brings is bringing attention to you. But then you go, actually, the last 2 or 3 years I've bet on that, or I've watched that a couple of times now. And you know what? The value's, you know, it's really good, but it doesn't happen. So again, you know, you use your years of experience to help you pick further bets.
Yep. And then you also on your website you refer to yourself as the double treble king, mate. I assume you're a fan of accumulators then, and is this something? How often would you say you put an accumulator on?
So obviously, so you've got a single, a double, and a treble, and then an accumulator. I think we class as the fourfold. So very rarely you see me go fourfold and above. Very rare. I think they're what I call the bookies' favourites. I feel that, you know, each week, you know, you get the man or the guy, whatever, puts £20 on his 10-fold, 20-fold accumulator that they might win once a season, but long term they are the bookie's favourites. But yeah, I've built quite a reputation with landing doubles and trebles quite consistently, and it really does build some good odds. So yeah, so it's just about, again, finding value in two different bets, and normally try and find a treble on a Saturday afternoon when you've got a variety to bet on. Doubles can be throughout the week at any time, whenever there's a few games on, or we do it as in like one bet on a Tuesday and the other bet on a Wednesday, but within the 24-hour period you've got the double laid. I really do, again, you use that to see the odds. You could have two even bets, 2.0, but you put them together and that's 2-1. So you then just basically, if you're that confident in both of them, you've then got yourself a free even bet for free, an extra win, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Once you've put your two even bets that you both like, well, if you put them together, we get 2-1 here. So again, that's really trying to find value and going, well, I really like these two bets across the weekend. I'm confident in this one, and I'm confident in this one. Why don't I pair them together, make that a double, and I've got even more value?
Yeah, I guess it's all on people's variance preference, I guess is the best way to put it, because obviously if normally people are just combining things together because they like it, they're not looking at the odds as much. So when you're doing that, you're only heightening the bookmaker's margin on a game. Whereas if you do combine two value bets, you're actually getting even more value. But the problem is that you're also increasing your variance, if you know what I mean. So even though you are combining two bets of 2.0, let's just say, and you're getting 4.0 in odds, you're not making a bet of 2.0. You're actually making a bet of 4.0, which actually means that your variance is going to be a lot higher. So it's something that people need to keep in mind, that yes, you're getting better odds. Yes, you are actually getting more value, but just because you've got 4.0 doesn't mean that it happens 50% of the time. It means that it actually will happen. Maybe, I don't know, if you look at probability, it's going to be better than 1 in 4 because you've got valuable odds there. But people need to keep that in mind. So you're happy to write out that kind of variance. You're happy to take that variance on board, if you know what I mean, even though you are getting better odds or getting more of a valuable bet.
Yeah, for me, I would rather do it like that way. Sometimes no. Sometimes I'll say I really like this even bet here, or this specific bet. That's going to be like my bet of the day, my banker, my real safe bet. So I might say I'm going to really stick with this one. I don't want to add it into another bet, although it might generate value. But I'm thinking, well, I'll keep this one here as a little, like your trump card for the day, and keep that as your main bet, and just lower obviously, rather than putting them both together and adding risk. But along the way, you do have to find or add some risk to make it profitable. But again, it's that fine margin of how far you want to go with it. Yeah.
All right. Cool, mate. So going on from my podcast last week with the Smart Betting Club, I wanted to find he basically, Pete said to me that it's not exactly a red flag, or it's not something bad if you come across a tipster on Twitter, whatever, wherever you find this tipster. It's not exactly a bad thing if they're not verified by an independent website, because he said lots of the time, at the end of the day, he verifies maybe 3 or 4 people every 2 or 3 months. He verifies 3 or 4 tipsters on that kind of regular basis, and there's a reason why they're not verified, and it's most of the time it's just because they haven't found the time to do it. Maybe they've never even heard of a tipster verification website. Mate, can you kind of explain to us why you are not verified by any kind of website like a Smart Betting Club?
Yeah, to be honest, when you mentioned it prior to the podcast, it was something that I'd really heard of, to be honest. I didn't really know that there was that many out there, to be honest. So for me, it'd be great, I'd be happy to have someone do that. I think it could only benefit me in the long term. But yeah, it's not something I see every day across Twitter or I'm ever really contacted about, to be honest. It's more, I more see the Twitter tipster accounts being popped up quite often, but I don't really see a verification or know what the verification entails. What do they do to verify, and what does that then, once they say verified you, what does that mean for me, and what does that mean for the punter? I don't know.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not too sure. There are obviously other verification websites out there other than Smart Betting Club, but Pete was telling me the kind of things they're looking at is your long-term profitability, running Monte Carlo simulations, p-values, trying to figure out whether your result, affiliations is another massive thing, whether they're affiliated with bookmakers or not, and trying to judge whether your success is due to randomness or luck, or whether it's actually due to you having an edge, and whether this could be a long-term profitable tipster that they can, they're happy to put their back behind and say, look, this guy's going to have long-term profitability. I don't know if I've completely bungled that or not. I'm sure Pete could explain it a lot better than me. But essentially, I guess the way I think he would summarize it is that looking at a tipster, and I'm only going to verify the ones that, based on all the tests we do, are they beating the closing line of Pinnacle was another one they did. Are the odds changing was another thing that he noticed, that he pointed out. Are the odds changing after they're offering these tips? Like, are they changing 30 minutes after each way? Are they changing an hour later? These kind of things. I mean, they do a very, very, from what it sounded like, it's a very thorough process to gauge the long-term profitability of a tipster. So would that be something you would look into doing now that you know about
I'd be open to anything, like I say, I quite like the fact of being able to possibly prove that, I have always said it's long-term profit that is key. And if that's something that they're looking to, verify, as in say, look, because you will have down weeks, down months possibly, and so that, but again, it's the long-term profit that is key, and that's something I always am willing to show people, the profit loss throughout the year. At any point of the time, they can see my profit loss, and I always go back to, on the bookies, whoever I bet with on them platforms. I think that's one of the truest ways of gaining the profit loss, especially from a tipster, because a lot of people can maybe tip and stuff like that, and pick and choose their bets. But for me, it's full time. You have to know that what you're doing, and there's no silly bets behind the background that are losing or winning or whatever. Whatever bet you're placing is there, and it's accountable on that profit loss for everybody to see. So I'd be open to anything like that. No problem.
Pete, you might have found yourself another customer, so there you go, mate. It'd be awesome if you guys both linked up together. And on that topic, what do you think about the tipster industry itself? Because I guess I said this to Pete last week. You can look at it in two ways and think, all right, lots of dodgy tipsters out there. That's not going to be good for me, is they're just going to think I'm the same. But then on the other hand, you could look at it and think there are lots of dodgy ones out there, and maybe I'm the shining light, I guess, of all the bad ones out there. How do you, how does illegitimate tipsters affect your service?
Well, to be honest, I think there's some very good tipsters out there, but there are some pretty awful ones out there too. And I probably wouldn't call, I wouldn't even call tipsters. I'd more call them chancers. There's a fine line, I suppose, isn't it? But there are some really good ones out there too. But I do think what maybe doesn't help the better tipsters and stuff like that is the amount of tipping pages that are set up like this, and within a month they're gone. That really, I think, affects our credibility as well, especially for new clients and new people looking to join. They might have joined with one of these people prior and maybe not been successful, or the service didn't last long, and and might just not been very good at all. But that can then obviously lead a doubt to other people wanting to try that again. So it's also what I always say is when somebody wants to join me and they are a little bit unsure, they say, I've been with this guy and he was awful, and he's closed his page down and this and that. I say, look, go on the website. There's 4 or 5 people there, or go on tweet to the free page looking for recommendations. I'll retweet it, and I'm sure anybody will be in contact, good or bad. But you will see people that will contact you, and let you guys talk, and let you ask the people that are in the group and that have been with me from the start. Ask them their thoughts and stuff like that. Don't let me sell it to you. Ask these people yourself that are actually, following my bets week in, week out. Again, they have no affiliation to me. I don't know them. They're just part and parcel of the VIP. So ask them people. They honest opinion. But I think the amount of tipster accounts that are created, it does question some of their legitimacy, I must say.
Yeah. And then the other issue is obviously you've got your falsified results, and then the other issue is affiliations with bookies too. So tipsters literally not really too focused on their tips, more so just trying to bring people to their page and then making a buck off sending someone to a bookmaker. Are you affiliated with any bookmakers?
I'm not affiliated, and I never will be affiliated. It's not something that I would do or I would look to be doing. And again, that is something you do have to look out for across Twitter, and I think across most platforms. Facebook, I know there's a Telegram, betting services across there as well. When you see these links constantly fired out for promos and stuff like that, you have to ask yourself, why. And what they're looking, to gain. So always, keep an eye on that and stuff like that. But yeah, again, with the falsified, the profit losses and stuff like that, that's why I always believe that the truest form for me as a tipster is on that betting page or the betting platform that I'm using, because it doesn't lie. I can't falsify it. I can't add winners in. I can't remove losers. It's a bet place, and it's there. And in fact, it's there for everybody to see once, if they ask, and I'm always willing to show my profit loss. I think, again, it gains me credibility. So you do see people that, may create an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. And for me, I always question, well, how do I know that bet, them 5 bets did win, or you placed them 5 bets, for example? Or you didn't edit the sheet after, or you didn't remove the 3 losers in between, So I always think a real, way is that profit loss on that page, and you can break that down into the week. Somebody could join you for the week and say, what's your profit loss last week? Here you go. What's it for the month? What's it for the year? And really break it down that way. So yeah, for me, they are real. They're real telltale signs when people don't want to show them.
Yeah, no, it's great, mate. I mean, one of the off the top of my head, 2 of the biggest red flags Pete said last week was, 1, if they're affiliated with bookmakers, and 2, if you never see a losing bet on their page, because it's literally impossible to have a 100% win record. So if they're not posting any losers, then you probably can make a logical assumption that they are complete bullshit. But mate, yeah, that's awesome. And it's honestly, it's been great having you on the podcast today. I just wanted to finish up with how people can get in touch with you, and how they can become a customer of you, and basically how your service works in general.
Yeah, so the service basically works is you can subscribe via Twitter or the website, which is hennersbets.com, and the Twitter is Hennerz Bets. You can message me on there. So prior to about a month ago, we've done 6 monthly and yearly options, and I felt that was the best way for all customers, really, to be honest. It gave them a real insight into, how I bet, and also it gave them a little bit of time to learn a little bit more and learn why I look for certain bets and stuff like that, and what I look at and why I might look at that, and to build a rapport with me and stuff like that. But most recently, through demand of customers and everybody tweeting and stuff like that, they also wanted a monthly platform. So we're now offering that as well. So yeah, you can give us a message on Twitter or contact me via the website hennersbets.com, and yeah, we look forward to talking soon.
Yeah, it's awesome, mate. It's good to have you on again. Once, like I said at the top of the podcast, it's good to it's great that you put your face out there and you're willing to answer any questions that I or anyone else has. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, mate.
No, thank you very much. And if you ever want me back on again, I'll be here, I'm sure.
Yeah, awesome, mate. All right, thanks to everyone for listening. In terms of what podcast is coming next, not 100% sure at the moment. I mean, you've kind of got the theme the last couple of weeks. We've had, two tipping kind of related, tipster related people on. So I hope these two podcasts have given you some really good insight into how the industry works and what good things to look out for, what bad things to look out for. So I hope you guys have really enjoyed that content. But yeah, thanks for listening once again. Please make sure you subscribe to our podcast. And I guess most importantly, if you could please rate and maybe write a review too of our podcast. It's really helpful if you guys could do that for us, just to get the podcast out there to more people. And other than that, just follow us on Twitter, like Hennas said himself. Follow us on Twitter. Check out our YouTube channel. Lots of cool content coming out at the moment. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook by searching Trademate Sports or Odds Hero, which is our match betting software. But thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next week.